To reread or not to reread, that is the question. Whether 'tis nobler on the shelf to suffer the unread TBR of outrageous number, or to find comfort in an old favourite, and by reading enjoy them. To reread or read new books, and by read to say we end the book piles and the thousands of unread books that our shelves are heir to. 'Tis a consummation, devoutly to be wished, to reread, to read, to read, perhaps something new. Aye, there's the rub, for in reading new books, what if I don't like them? When we have shuffled off this mortal TBR, and our shelves are empty, there's the goal. But I'd really rather just read this one for the third time. These are all my read books, and I've been thinking a lot about rereading, and I thought I'd just kind of go through each kind of cube and pick out one book to reread, and explain why I'd like to reread them. I think there's 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16 shelves altogether with read books on them here. So let's get started. They're just organized not by genre at all, but just by author's last name. So we're going to start over here with the A's, and down here it ends with the Z's. And I'm only going to look at the first level of books. They're double stacked, so I'm only going to look at the first one, which kind of pits the back ones at a disadvantage, but who knows. So let's start turning on those lights. And I already know in this section which one I want to reread, and that's The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. I've read this probably like 15 years ago almost now, and I really want to reread it because I keep saying it's one of my favorite books, but I've only read it once and I haven't tabbed it. A lot of the reasons I want to reread these books is because I want to go through and tab them and annotate them. So this is one that I want to do that. Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, in case you don't know, is about a man on Earth who is friends with an alien, but he doesn't know he's an alien, and finds out that Earth is about to be demolished. And so the alien helps him and they hitchhike a ride, you guessed it, across the galaxy. So it's about kind of like the last human on Earth, kind of hanging out with aliens and doing fun, weird things. It's really witty and insightful and interesting from what I remember reading it 15 years ago. On to the next shelf. I already know again. I looked at these shelves last night and I was just looking at all the books and I was like, I want to reread that one. I want to reread that one. I want to reread that one. And this is going to be Can You Hear the Nightbird Call by Anita Badami. She's one of my favorite authors. I've read everything she's written and I'm patiently waiting for more to come out. And this is one of my favorites by her. Can You Hear the Nightbird Call is about, it takes place over a huge span of years. I think it starts with the partition in India and Pakistan, and it ends in 1985 with Air India Flight 182, which was coming from Canada going over to India, and it was hijacked and it exploded. So it's dealing with a lot of tough issues, also dealing with lots of family issues. We have family in India and family in Canada, so it's also about the immigration experience and leaving people behind and what life is like for them and going back to your home country, and it's all just so beautifully written. I love Anita Badami's writing. This. I say I love Russian literature, but I haven't really read much outside of Dostoevsky and this and a few other things, but I really would love to reread this Russian masterpiece by Mikhail Bulgakov. And I think this would really make a lot more sense on a second reading. The first reading I enjoyed it, but I was very confused about names, about what was going on, about who's there, who's this. And I think a second reread would definitely be more enjoyable, knowing things. And again, I'd like to tab it and whatnot, and annotate it. And this is, I'll just read the back because this probably will do a better summarization of what I do. The devil comes to Moscow wearing a fancy suit. With his disorderly band of accomplices, including a demonic gun-toting tomcat, he immediately begins to create havoc. Margarita discovers that her lover has vanished in this chaos and makes a bargain with the devil. So yeah, lots of interesting things going on there. Over here is where it continues. This was like the C's and this is like the D's. And I think you know which book I'm going to go for, because another book I say is my favorite is House of Leaves by Mark C. Danielewski. I've only read it once. I'd like to read it again. If you remember my review, I had this completely annotated, or not annotated, but tagged, and interesting things going on, and I ripped out all those tags because I lent this book to someone and I said, you know, you gotta read this is awesome. And he didn't like it and didn't understand why this was so good. And I really regret ripping all that stuff out and lending it to him. But this just gives me an opportunity to do it all over again. If you don't know, House of Leaves is another complicated text. The primary story is that the one that all the stories function around. There's like 3 different stories going on at once. But the primary story that it all centers around is this photographer and his wife live in this house, and they discover that it's bigger on the inside than it is on the outside. And there's this mysterious hallway that may or may not have something inside it. And it's like a horror, thriller, psychological mess with you book. And then there's like experimental pages and stuff, and you know, all sorts of weird things going on with the texts. And let's see if we can get a really cool page. It's like this way, and then you have to go this way, and then you have to go this way again. And yeah, it is really cool. I love it. And we'll go over here, and this is going to be an interesting pick. I don't know off the top of my head which one to pick. And I'm just doing the front row. Okay. I think we're going to go with this, Dave Eggers. You Shall Know Our Velocity. I read this on a school trip to Nicaragua, and it was the perfect book for that time. And so this book is linked with that specific time and place. And so I'm not entirely sure rereading it would be as enjoyable, or if I keep comparing it to the experience I had down there. Dave Eggers, I first read A Heartbreaking Work of Staggering Genius when I was far too young to understand what was going on. I think it was in like grade 8 or something. But I knew I enjoyed it. And then I saw this one and I thought, oh, I'll bring this one on the trip with me. This is about a man who gets $32,000 and he wants to give it all away in a week. And he's going around the world to do that. And it is very interesting. Yeah, definitely recommend anything by Dave Eggers, to be honest. Then we move over here. This is more G's. Oh, it's kind of out of frame, isn't it? So let's just move you slightly. There. Let's look at this shelf. Lord of the Flies by William Golding. This is another one of my favorite books. I've read this book like 10 times. I probably have this book memorized, but I still like to reread it. And I like to tag it because I haven't since I started reread this book. I used to reread it every year. And this edition too, this really weird yellow copy, Faber School Editions. And I love this book ever since I read it in grade 10. And our teacher was, I really didn't like the teacher, but he really taught this book really well. And I really enjoyed that. So yeah, I'd like to reread this again. Lord of the Flies is about a group of boys, young middle school age boys, crash land on an island. All the adults are dead, and they are setting up society again. There's 2 different factions, and they end up fighting each other, arguing about, you know, who should be in charge and what things should be done. Yeah, quite interesting. Over here. And these are H's in front here. And okay. Oh. This is hard. This is really hard. Yeah. Okay. So I was going to pick out Dune, but I decided to go with the Iliad by Homer. It's been in the sun. Look at the difference in the colors there. Anyways, I've had this book a long time too. I believe it was my first year of university that we read this. And I mean, it's a classic. I just haven't read it again since then, and I don't know if this is a good translation or not. I enjoyed it when I read it. It's told in verse and rhyming verse, and I appreciate that. I think I'd more just read it for the story anyways, or maybe read that translation that was done that is more feminist. I'm not sure, but yeah, I think I'd really like to reread the Iliad, just so that I remember more of it, because I don't really remember all that much about it. In case you don't know what it's about, is a Greek classic poetry about a war between the Greeks and the Trojans, and I'm assuming you know the Iliad. I don't think I have to say any more about that. And I just realized Ulysses is behind there, but that is actually a book I'm going to reread for sure next year, so we'll just ignore that. On the next shelf we have On the Road by Jack Kerouac, and I'm really showing the origins of me starting to like more modern literature and it being a lot of dude bro lit, because that's where I was getting my recommendations from, was a lot of dudes online. But I actually really enjoyed this, and I'd like to reread it and see if I'd still enjoy it today. This is about a man going on a road trip across America, and he's during the 1950s underground America, jazz, sex, generosity, chill, dawns, and drugs, with Sal Paradise and his hero Dean Moriarty. Yeah, I just really enjoy the writing in this and would like to go back and tab it and annotate it again. On to mostly the L's, and I have an interesting dilemma here because I want to like reread everything on this shelf, but I think I'm gonna go with The Left Hand of Darkness, which I have in this naked hardback, because I know I've read it. I can't remember anything about it. I can't. I don't know when I read it, but I know that I have read this. I just can't remember anything about it. And I love Ursula K. Le Guin's writing. I have the whole Wizard of Earthsea here. I just read The Dispossessed, and the word for world is forest. I know I love it, and this is in the same universe as The Dispossessed and the other one. And it has to do with gender, I believe. I'd really like to reread that. Okay, and then we move on to the M's here, and this is, oh, I think I know what I like to reread. This here, Angels Watching Over Me by Lurlene McDaniel. These were like really weird teen Christian books, and I got this as a gift one year and I read the book and it was really interesting, and I'd like to go back and reread it. That's why it stayed on my shelves for so long. I've had this since I was a teenager. Doesn't have a date, or what? 2002. Yeah, so just in high school. And I just read the first one in this. I haven't read the other ones. But it's about a girl who kind of gets abandoned by her parents. Like, they're rich and they're off traveling and they leave her at home, so they're not like abandoning her on the streets. But then she gets really sick and she ends up in the hospital, and her parents are still like, no, we're off, you know, traveling, doing whatever we want. You can, you know, the hospital will take care of you. And she discovers that angels are there watching over her. So yeah, interesting early Christian literature. Then we move more onto the M's here, and I would love to read the Dead Kid Detective Agency again. But I'd blaze through these books and then be very upset that there's not a fifth one out yet. So I'm gonna go for another one here, and that's The Night Circus by Erin and Morgenstern. And I actually listened to this on audiobook, and I really enjoyed it. And so I'd like to actually read the physical copy that I have here. And this is about two magician apprentices, I believe, is what I'd call them. And they're kind of set up to battle each other, and it takes place in the circus, which is super magical, super atmospheric, and just beautiful writing. And I'd really like to actually read it instead of listening to it. I consider audiobooks reading, but I would like to read the words on the page as opposed to just being told them as well. And then again over here. I studied Poe extensively. I have like his stories memorized, his poems memorized, so I'm not going to reread Poe, even though I'm drawn to it. Instead, I picked out the Gormenghast trilogy. I love this series. This is all three. I'd just start by rereading the first one, which is called Titus Groan. I'm so used to just calling it Gormenghast. And this is by Mervyn Peake, and it's called a fantasy of manners, and that it's not really your typical kind of fantasy. How do I describe it? It's about a royal family and a servant in this castle called Gormenghast, and the castle is as much character as the characters, the people are, and it's kind of about daily life and how absurd things are, and how people are trying to change it, but should they change it? Should they stick with tradition? Should they challenge things? Is the person challenging it going to be a better leader or not? Yeah, it's really worth it and really absurd and makes you think a lot. And we're gonna go back over here. This is like a little bookshelf tour. I'm gonna do a more in-depth bookshelf tour at one point, but now I'm just like picking off certain books. I'm gonna cheat and I'm gonna pull out two books, but they're by the same author, so they're And the Birds Rained Down and 21 Cardinals by Jocelyn Saucier, translated by Rhonda Mullins, both of them. And I love the writing in these books, and the stories are so weird. So And the Birds Rained Down is in northern Ontario in a forest. We have some retirees living, and they just want to, you know, be free, be by themselves. They make money by, you know, collecting their social their social checks, and their old age checks, and by growing weed. And then this person comes and wants to photograph and get to know them. Yeah, it's really good. And then we have 21 Cardinals, which is about a family with 21 kids, and they're someone in the family dies, and they all come together, and we learn about their lives, but it is very good. This is book 2, but technically I want to read the whole series. Another naked hardback, because I wasn't a fan of keeping the dust jackets on, and they'd always get destroyed, and I just throw them in the garbage. So this is actually book 2, but I'd read the whole series. The Bartimaeus trilogy, by Jonathan Stroud, I believe his name is. Yes. And this is a YA middle grade. I'm not entirely sure where it would sit on the spectrum because it's been a while. I'd want to say middle grade, but like upper middle grade, so like on that border. Anyways, it's about a young man, another magical apprentice story. But the magic works by summoning demons. I believe it's been a long time since I read this. 2004, so I was in high school when I read this series. Yeah, I can't remember, and that's why I want to reread it, because I remember enjoying it immensely, but I can't tell you exactly what it's about. I'm gonna pick out this one, Kurt Vonnegut. I say Kurt Vonnegut's one of my favorite authors, and I've read like almost everything he's ever written. Like, I've just blasted through his list of books back in university, which was again more than 10 years ago. So can I tell you what this book is about? Yes, a bit. I can tell you that I really super enjoyed it, and I'd like to go through and tab it and annotate it again. This is okay. The richest, most depraved man on earth, Malachi Constant, is offered a chance to take a space journey to distant worlds with a beautiful woman at his side. Of course, there's a catch to the invitation and a prophetic vision about the purpose of human life that only Vonnegut has the courage to tell. So yeah, this is about, I don't remember much about him. I remember them being on Titan, and what the book is, the secret of the book is, which I won't tell you because it's a spoiler. But yeah, definitely want to reread that. Well, this dominant part of the shelf is the Little House on the Prairie series, even though the first book in the series is called Little House in Big Woods. And I probably haven't read these since before high school. I remember them being a huge part of my childhood, I know my favorite is On the Banks of Plum Creek, but if I was going to reread it, I'd start at the beginning. It's about a pioneering family in the States. Yeah, I think it's American, not Canadian. And just having their family and moving a lot and, you know, being white settlers on land and stuff like that. But, you know, I enjoyed it when I was a kid. And this was my particular favorite because if you see, their house was built under a hill, like literally, like there's grass and like earth in their hill. So yeah, that's what I'd like to reread. And I do believe that's it. The rest of these books are just sequels. I haven't read them yet, but I didn't want to wrap them. So that's it. Let me know what books you'd like to reread. And if you've read any of these books and maybe like to reread them with me or read them for the first time with me, that would be great. Because I can't do buddy reads otherwise because my books are all wrapped and don't know what the books are. So yeah, that's it. Thank you for watching.